is lean culture, how we benchmark it, how we measure it, how we reflect on it, and how we improve a lean culture within our organization today as well. Hopefully towards the end we'll have time for some discussion. As I said, participants are more than welcome to ask a question, unmute themselves at any point in time. We will have some polls across the session today, so you'll be able to contribute that way. But look, please turn on your video. Let's have some questions, let's have some discussion. This isn't a Midlands Lean lecture, it's a Midlands Lean network. So we're here to talk to each other. We're here to see some other people in the room. We're here to kind of help build out that community here in the Midlands and nationally as well. So look, it'd be great to see some faces and know that you're following along within it as well. So obviously, hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for discussion. But if not, we will have the polls as well. The Midlands Lean Network is its vision, I suppose, is to bring together excellence within this region and to provide a forum within the region for individuals and for organizations to network, to collaborate and to learn from each other as well. And across the year and across the multiple years that we've been in operation, our aim is to kind of help, you know, bring everyone together through networking events. And this year, obviously with COVID and, you know, the last couple of years with COVID, we've moved towards digital webinars, which has been really advantageous because we could bring much more people into the actual fold and into the events as well. So as the format for the webinar, we're going to have 6 webinars this year. This is the 3rd of them, and hopefully from this month and next month onwards, we'll start into some of the actual networking sessions and some site visits once we get some volunteers as well. The Midlands Lean Network is part of the broader national ecosystem or community of Lean and Lean Business Ireland. So Lean Business Ireland is the national body. The conference is on May 24th. And the awards are on the Crow Park on September 29th. We'll mention that a little bit later on as well, or right at the end. But today we're here to talk about the lean culture benchmark. So how we can go about, you know, a measuring culture or lean culture within our organization, how we can reflect on it, learn from it, understand where we're at, and what we can do to actually improve it as well. So I'm delighted to welcome myself. I'm here. I'm Stuart Nelson. I'm chair of the Midlands Lean Network, but also a lean and leadership coach with Jigsaw Better Business. A lot of you would probably know me already. I'm also joined today by Julie O'Sullivan, who's head of people development and an organizational psychologist with Jigsaw. Julie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi, everyone. As Stuart said, I'm the head of people development with Jigsaw. So as an organizational psychologist, my aim is to improve the way that people experience work. So I do that mainly through training and coaching with individuals and leaders and teams in order to create more inclusive and productive and effective workplaces. So I'm delighted to be joining you all to discuss how to create and sustain a high-performing lean culture.
That's great. So we're going to hear a lot more from Julie over the next 40 minutes or so. But we're going to, and just before we start into the actual presentation, I just wanted to flag something that just arrived this morning. It's been happening a lot in the background. You may have come across this campaign, but we thought there was an opportunity, just given that so many of you are in the corporate sector as well, just to flag this for you as well. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a campaign to pack sunflower seeds, in which the lean community got involved in helping to design the work cells. You can see it here in the slides. Everyone can see my screen okay? Yeah, perfect. And really the campaign was to get 100,000 packets of seeds packed in a day with a team of volunteers down in Tullow. But there's a call now for some further support here, where the actual organisers would like companies to buy packs of seed for their employees or for their customers as well. So it's a small donation, and which you can actually purchase the product directly from the organisers, and all of the funds go directly into the Irish Red Cross appeal for Ukraine. So I think that link is just being shared now in the chat. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Julie. So anyone who feels that they can help, it's a small ask. It's anywhere between €5 and €100 or more if you can. The So Now for Ukraine is an initiative set up by the Tullow Friends of Ukraine, in which their aim is to get 100,000 packets of sunflower seeds sold out into the community, and get everybody in Ireland planting sunflower seeds this month, so that in Ukraine, sunflowers will be popping up, so that in Ireland in September, sunflower seeds will be popping up all across the country, to show the people that are still here from Ukraine that there is some solidarity as well. So a really great initiative, volunteer-led, and with all profits and fundraising going directly to the Irish Red Cross appeal. So if any of you can help with that, would be fantastic. Or if you have any more questions on it, you can let us know, or would like to get involved as well. Okay, perfect. So there's this island in Japan. It's about 1,500 kilometers southwest of Tokyo, called Okinawa, and is one of the world's 5 blue zones of longevity. Okinawa is unique because of the close bonds between the residents and the community that they form. And what's different here within this blue zone, in the blue zones, is that a highly unusual percentage of seniors on this island, and these islands in the blue zones, they live beyond 100 years of age. And their secret, they seem to have boiled it down to, is this concept called Ikigai. Okay, and Ikigai is a Japanese concept referring to something that gives a person a sense of purpose and really a reason for living. And Ikigai can be broken down into these categories here, and it comes from really what you love. Okay, so what you love to do, what you're passionate about, what the world actually needs from you. Okay, so what the world needs, what your actual strengths are. So it's great that you love it, but are you actually good at it? And then really, can we turn it into something that we can be paid for? And when all of those, when those 4 things intersect perfectly, we get passion, we get mission, we get profession, and we get vocation. And where all of those intersect, then we get the concept of Ikigai. Okay, so something that we love doing, and it's something that our life is actually starting to center around. So our passion, our mission, and our vocation, and our profession, to give us that Ikigai for individuals. So here today, we're here to talk about, firstly, what is a lean culture? So what is a lean culture, and how is it measured within your organization? Now, for most businesses that are taking part in lean is measured, and sometimes we call this as lean culture being measured, in the types of tools that we're actually delivering. So whether that be 5S and how well that's performing, whether it be our bottlenecks and how we're looking to reduce them and how that's performing, how we manage flow, how often we go to the Gemba, are we eliminating waste? What are the KPIs within the organization? So all of these really valuable lean tools that give us significant measurement and then opportunities to improve on that. That's typically how most companies measure their performance in lean. And they also measure their culture. Perhaps they see that, well, this is how well we're doing in lean because this is what's actually happening here. But for most of us know is that the tools and the practices really are only the tip of the iceberg in terms of successful lean implementation. Strategy alignment, leadership is key, and behavior and engagement of our teams. Okay, so right underneath the 9/10 of the iceberg that's beneath the water is leadership behavior, team behavior, individual behavior, and organizational behavior. And really, that's going to tell us what the lean culture is like within our organization, that's helping to implement all of those tools and practices that we see on the 1/10 of the iceberg that's above the water. But they're also an aspect that's often not measured, not assessed, and we don't really know what to do with it. We love to talk about lean culture. We love to talk about the culture of continuous improvement. We love to talk to shaping and improving that. But we all find it very hard to do anything with it. So today we're going to talk about, well, one, how do we measure that? And then with anything, how do we measure it? How do we reflect on it or analyze it? And then how do we improve it? And that's the first step. It's this Kijun. It's the measurement aspect of it. Okay, so the first step to getting somewhere is to knowing where we are at. Okay, and we do that by measuring or assessing where we're currently at. So that can be done in a qualitative perspective. Okay, so we can look around, we can ask, we can get some feedback, but it can also be done with a quantitative aspect as well. And quantitatively, it can be done through psychometric testing. So what are we going to test? Well, we believe that the pillars of a successful lean culture are the leadership, the quality of the leadership, and how they behave. how teams interact with each other. So how teams gel, how they perform, and how they deliver. The individuals within that organization, how do they behave? How do they deliver? How engaged are they? Are they reaching their own sense of Ikigai? And the organization, the environment in which all of these individuals in their various roles exist in, how does the organization behave? Okay, and how clear is it on that? So as I said, we can do this through psychometric testing. Okay, and many of these aspects can be measured through psychometric testing. So the first one is leadership. Okay, and we look at a particular model of leadership that maps quite well onto lean, and that's authentic and transformational leadership. Now Julie's just going to open a poll here with some sample items of what authentic and transformational leadership is, which you can start to fill in. But this isn't a full-scale psychometric test, but it's some sample questions that we would use from the benchmark to help you understand or to measure or to gauge leadership within your organization. So what is authentic and transformational leadership, and how does it map onto the type of leaders we need in a lean organization? So the first aspect we're going to talk about is transformational leadership. So a transformational leader is a leader who looks to set out and influence what people do, okay? And they do that, first of all, by trying to build trust, and they act with integrity. And that influences people to follow and to behave in a certain way. They then also start to coach people. So they don't just tell people what to do, but they support people to discover things by themselves and to go on that learning journey. And as coaches, they use a concept we like to call individualized consideration, where it's not just about teaching to the masses, it's about seeing the individual for who they are and having a different style and approach for dealing with them. So considering the individual within the organization on an individual perspective and not just one of many. They encourage innovative thought through intellectual stimulation. They seek out to inspire others and to motivate them as well. And really I'm missing a piece here in the slide. And the final part with a transformational leader is they're not afraid to manage when they need to be. So there's a time, and we know this, when we have to instruct. So there isn't always an opportunity for coaching. Sometimes we need to be very direct in what we're trying to do. And that happens when we recognize when the situation is there for when there's an opportunity to manage or to tell as opposed to teach, but knowing the difference of when it's actually required. And knowing when it's required really comes from the second aspect of leadership that we look to measure as well. This concept of self-awareness. So the leader being authentic in themselves, to be self-aware and understand their impact. Okay, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, knowing your limitations, and knowing how you're viewed by other people. Okay, and your self-awareness is used then in your interactions with your followers and with others in the environment. It's also important to be transparent in your exchanges with your team. So understanding how that openness and sharing of yourself actually inspires or leads others as well, and not being afraid to share your own failings, your own challenges, where you've had issues in the past and how you've learned from them, and hopefully your followers can learn from them as well. Being ethical. Okay, so being ethical is also key. Having clear moral standards. Okay, having those clear moral standards communicated. Okay, but also living them as well. Okay, essentially a form of self-regulation, guided by your internal moral standards, and really letting that show in your decision making and your actions, as well as your internalized and externalized values as well. Next up is being balanced in your processing. Okay, so considering all aspects, all views before making a decision. Taking all of the data on board, other people's opinions, soliciting opposing views to help inform that decision making as well, and really just being balanced in all of that. And really, what that leads to is the final factor we like to have in terms of an authentic leader is being adaptable. Okay, so being fully adaptable, so that when you do take on board all of that information, and it comes out as something that was very different from where we originally wanted to go, so we're not afraid to change that decision process or change the direction based on all of the input and the feedback that we've received from our team. And that's the first aspect that gets measured, is the transformational and authentic leadership in the Kijun, or in the measurement side of things. And that type of leader leader helps shape great teams. Okay, and that's what Julie's going to talk to you about next.
Yeah, exactly, Stuart. I think the leader's behaviors really will have a great impact on how the team behaves and what kind of culture is promoted. So I've got this image up. I think a lot of us are probably familiar with the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. Just as a reminder, it's basically two swindlers arrive at a city and they tell the Emperor that they can supply him with these magnificent clothes that are invisible to those who are stupid or incompetent. So everyone goes along with it, saying the clothes look amazing because they don't want to seem inept, until a child finally blurts out that the Emperor is wearing nothing at all. And this kind of thing, unfortunately, can happen quite often, because nobody comes to work wanting to look stupid or inept or incompetent. You know, we don't want to necessarily be that person that's negative or disruptive. You know, we try to avoid that discomfort where we can. So while it's very natural, it's not necessarily helpful. And Stuart will just pop up a poll in a second now on the next aspect, which is psychological safety. So it's about creating that team environment where people feel comfortable expressing and being themselves. So this psychological safety has been shown to be one of the strongest predictors of team effectiveness. Google's Project Aristotle showed that, amongst other research. And it's basically, you know, when this climate exists, people believe that they can speak up with new ideas or problems or concerns or mistakes without fearing punishment or rejection or humiliation. So, you know, we'll see on the next slide that the different things that we'll see is that, you know, teams might be diverse, but each team member will still feel included and feel like their differences are what makes them valuable to the team. There can be open dialogue. People don't feel afraid to speak up and challenge ideas. They, you know, are willing to help each other. And there is a constructive attitude to risk and failure. So when things go wrong or they don't go according to plan, rather than focusing on who's to blame, they're focusing on what can be learned. So when there is that lack of psychological safety, and unfortunately it's fairly common, as we mentioned, it's quite normal. But when that's lacking, we see blame culture. We see mistakes or bad news being hidden. So this aspect is really valuable to reducing workarounds, you know, because if problems and mistakes aren't hidden, then we'll be able to address them first time and learn from them. It also increases knowledge sharing, creates an environment in which, you know, knowledge is freely shared. It's also really beneficial for innovation and creativity, because people feel more comfortable trying something new that maybe they've not done before in the efforts of, you know, continuous improvement. So that's obviously really important. And then as well as that, people in a psychologically safe team are more likely to feel included, to feel empowered to do their best work, and that will lead them to feeling more engaged. So I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, creating this kind of culture, it's not easy. It's not something that happens overnight. It's definitely created by design with intentional efforts. So yes, I just see Stuart popping into the chat there about a new poll that's come up. So answering those in relation to your team. And if you're not maybe working in a team at the moment, you know, maybe answer in relation to the most recent team that you were a part of. So yeah, it's about designing this, you know, intentionally creating it, for example, in a meeting, rather than saying, I assume everyone agrees, okay, perfect, we'll move along. You know, rather than saying that, you might say, okay, I want to get everyone's input, or, oh, Stuart, you've been quite quiet this meeting. What are your thoughts here? What are you thinking or feeling? So it's really making sure that you're soliciting different opinions. So I mentioned that this environment, this psychologically safe environment, will help people to feel included and engaged. And that brings us on to that piece on individual behavior. So psychologically safe teams are more engaged teams. So we'll just take out that first poll of psychological safety, and we'll just pop up another one, again, with just a couple of sample items from an assessment to measure employee engagement. And the point of this really is, when people are engaged, they feel that their job is worth doing. They feel their job's rewarding, they enjoy it, they look forward to it. You would see them having vigor and enthusiasm and dedication to their work. They'd be absorbed in it. They'd, really get lost in the work. And they'd be willing to put in discretionary effort, right? So going that next step, going a bit above and beyond just their job description. And at the moment, we're hearing about the Great Resignation. We are seeing a huge amount of people choosing to change jobs, more than we've potentially ever seen before. So it really has never been more important to ensure that your people are engaged. And of course, it benefits the employee to be engaged because, they like what they're doing. They want to do more of it. But of course, it impacts the company's bottom line as well. So, if you are losing people because they are not engaged and they're not staying with you as an employer, the cost of recruiting and onboarding is huge. And similarly, if you have people that aren't engaged, there's a huge cost that you're missing out on of, what could be done versus what's actually being done. And so I think it's really something that companies can't afford to not consider, or they can't afford to not consider. So I think it absolutely should be measured. So it's through conducting surveys, interviews, focus groups, identifying, are there any obstacles in the way of, employee engagement, people being at their best and being as engaged as possible. And again, this really ties in with psychological safety, because if you have that climate where people feel comfortable voicing their opinion, voicing if there's any problems, then those will get addressed. So as you can see, those are really intertwined there. So I suppose we've chatted about how leaders behave, which influences how teams interact and behave. And then we're talking about how that links into how an employee works and how they behave. And all of those things together will impact the overall organizational culture. How does the organization behave?
So the organizational behavior. I think you were coming to me. You were coming to me next. The PowerPoint tennis is getting distracting a little bit as well. So I'm just going to end that. Employee engagement poll as well. Just to explain, I'll explain briefly in a second about what the polls were and what they're about. The final part of the benchmarking, I suppose, or the measurement is the organizational behavior. Okay, and that's probably more of an assessment than a measurement. Okay, so it's looking around to see, is there a mission, a vision for the organization? Are there clear values for the organization? And probably moreover than that, are they actually communicated? Are they shared? So when you walk into a company or walk into, the look, and you see the look and the feel of it, is there a mission statement for all employees to see? Are values listed? How are those values created? And what is the vision for the organization and for their customers? And really that's an assessment to see, first of all, well, is it present or not? And then secondly, well, how was it created? And was it created collaboratively, or was it done by somebody in a room as well? So are they clear? Are we communicating them? And do they align at all? And that's the organizational piece, because it's the organizational piece in which all of the individuals, the teams, and the leaders are interacting in. The organization is the environment. It's the ecosystem in which they behave. And if that's not right as a broader team, then nothing else will be right within the organization as well. That brings us on to our second Japanese term, Hansei, which is reflection. Okay, so it's reflecting on what has happened. So we've given you some sample items from the psychometric tests, which through the poll system here on Zoom. But what would happen if you were doing this in your organization is that you would actually do a full assessment. And from that, you would have individual and company reports. Okay. And within that, then what you'd have is, so individual reflection pieces, my leadership, how it rates against the behavior, so how my behavior rates against my own opinion of my leadership capabilities and competencies, and how I'm perceived by others. So how I'm perceived by my followers and those within my team, how I'm perceived by my peers, and how I'm perceived by my bosses, so the upper echelons of the organization as well. So you can do that through a 360 approach as well. So that's the first part, is an assessment of my leadership. Now, not all organizations are mature enough to do 360s, and in that case we would recommend that you just get an impression of leadership within the organization without naming one, a single person individually on the assessment test. The second part of the reflection is the team and the organization. So as I said, you get that through measuring psychological safety. Okay, so you can assess psychological safety in the organization, and then you can also assess the individual's employee engagement. You know, so how engaged is that individual? And really, what you can start to get from the analysis and the reflection of the psychometric test is there patterns within the data? Same as we do with any kind of lean project. Is there patterns within the data? So am I seeing that one particular team is less engaged than another team? And how does that relate into how the quality of that leadership in that team is reported? Are there differences in psychological safety within teams? So if it's designed in that way, you can actually break down by team, by leader, by cell, whatever that might be, by department, you know, how is the leader behaving? And then how is his or her team performing underneath them in terms of psychological safety, and start to see patterns and action areas from that as well. As we said about the organizational purpose reflection, it's there or it's not. Okay, so is a mission, a vision, and values, do they exist within the organization? And if they do exist, how are they created? How are they generated as well? I think at this point, Julie might share some of the results of the polls, and maybe just explain what they were as well. So yeah. I think you're sharing the.
I've got the authentic and transformational leadership one up there in front of us. So hopefully everyone can see that. We can see on the first question about I go beyond the self-interest for the good of the group. Majority, about 50% of people are saying fairly often, 39% saying frequently, if not always. So that's great. I think the majority of people are feeling like, yeah, they do that quite a lot. Second question then. So that one, you know, relates to idealized influence. The second one is about, you know, I talk about my most important values and beliefs. For that one, it was 33% said sometimes, 33% said fairly often, and then 17% for each said once in a while or frequently, if not always. So again, that ties in with idealized influence. I seek differing perspectives when solving problems. Again, a majority, 44% saying fairly often, and then another 39% saying frequently, if not always. That relates to the intellectual stimulation aspect of transformational leadership. Number 4 was I articulate a compelling vision for the future. And again, a slight majority, 33% saying frequently, if not always. That one relates to inspirational motivation. And then the 5th one there, I treat others as individuals rather than just as members of a group. And quite a big majority, 67% said frequently, if not always. So I think amongst this group, it seems like a lot of people are tapping into that individual consideration aspect of transformational leadership.
And that individual consideration, I mean, that's the coaching practice. I mean, I think for all of us here, and I think most of us, I look around the names I'm familiar with, are lean practitioners, you know, and we do have that coaching approach, you know, so that should be naturally either in our style or where we're trying to get to as well. So it's coaching as a style of leadership, supporting those within our teams to grow. One thing I'll pepper this self-reflection. So we mentioned at the start that there's options of self-reflection and there's options for 360 where we rate ourselves or we are rated along these behaviors, and we're all a bit guilty of the Irish mammy syndrome when it comes to talking about ourselves. we all think we're a bit great, and we all tend to rate ourselves. We're either awesome, or we're either really easy on ourselves, or we're really hard on ourselves as well. So there's a measure to be considered, I think, when we're talking about reflecting on our own behavior. And that's where the value of the 360 comes in, is not being afraid to ask others, how would you rate me? Not face to face, but through a system of a 360 psychometric. And then it's the difference between where we think we are versus where other people think we're at as well. So we always kind of remind people of that when they're doing self-rating psychometric testings as well. We tend to be a little bit easier on ourselves than we could be.
Yeah, I think it really depends, I think, on the person as well, because I have seen a lot of people who do 360s and their self-perception is so much harsher, you know, or they're such a harsh critic of themselves. And then it's kind of nice to see that, no, everyone sees you as performing well, and you've rated yourself quite harshly. So that's also, I think, regardless of, you know, if you rate yourself higher or lower than how other people see you, that's just such valuable information and data to get access to. Yeah. But yeah, it's where the value of the 360 comes in, but also kind of the scary part of, you know, going into the unknown and asking people for their honest opinions. Yeah, so it does definitely require a lot of bravery.
So the second part, will I pop up the employee engagement, which is a self one, yeah. So the self one, do you want to go through that there, Julie?
Yeah. So we've got so for this one was the psychological safety piece, and it's just basically, these are a couple of questions that are ways of assessing psychological safety within your team. So people at this organization are able to bring up problems and tough issues. So we can see there within this group, a majority said that was somewhat accurate, 63% said that, and then 32% said that it's very accurate. So it seems like quite a majority are saying that, yes, you know, we can talk about problems and tough issues. Going on to the second one, feel safe to take a risk. Again, a majority are saying that applies to their organization. If we go on to the third one, it's difficult to ask other members of this organization for help. So in this one, it's reverse scored, right? So we have 50% saying that that's very inaccurate, that it's difficult to ask for help, which is a good thing, right? So if you were saying it's very accurate that it's difficult to ask for help, that would be a sign that there's lower psychological safety. Number 4 was, no one at my organization would deliberately act in a way that undermines my efforts. And again, we have 39% saying that it's somewhat accurate, 33% saying it's very accurate. And with this one, I think we have a few more people saying that it's inaccurate. So maybe some people may undermine their efforts a little bit. And then the 5th one was, working with members of this organization, my unique skills and talents are valued and utilized. 50% again saying somewhat accurate, 39% saying very accurate, and 11% saying somewhat inaccurate. So yeah, I think we can see that for most people, there seems to be at least a decent sense of psychological safety. I suppose one thing that, you know, again, if we're reflecting on these, you might ask yourself is, well, are you a leader? You might feel comfortable voicing your opinion or asking people for help, but I wonder, would other people feel the same? You know, if they've only been working with the company for, you know, a month or 6 months, do you think that they would answer in the same way? So this only really works when everyone is answering that, yes, that's accurate, that, you know, that I can bring up tough issues, regardless of tenure or experience. So that's just one to think about. It's great to see that a lot of those people are responding positively to them, but have a think about, you know, would that be applicable to everyone in the organization or your team?
Okay, perfect. And I'm just going to share the employee engagement results here to reflect on as well. Judy, if you want to go through them as well.
Yeah, exactly. So with this one, there's a couple of subscales. There's dedication, absorption, and vigor. And that first one, I find the work that I do full of meaning and purpose. Again, a majority are saying often or always, and that's a sign of dedication. Question 2 was, when I'm working, I forget everything else around me. This is a sign of absorption. So again, we have a majority saying often, and then we've got about 25 saying sometimes, 19% saying always. When I get up in the morning, I feel like going to work. And it's brilliant to see that, 53% of people are saying often and 40% of people are saying always. So that shows that dedication as well for that one, or sorry, for vigor for that one, number 3. Number 4, I'm proud of the work I do. Again, great to see that everyone is either in the often or always category. So that shows dedication again to the work. And number 5, at work, I persevere even when things do not go well. That's a sign of vigor. And again, we've got everyone in the room, thankfully, saying either often or always. So it's good to see that a lot of people seem to be quite engaged in the work that they're doing.
So we've a completely motivated, highly driven bunch here today. Well, I mean, I wouldn't have expected any less from from the Midlands Lean Network as well. Now, as I said, these results, I suppose, for you guys, the cohort of people that are motivated to come to a talk like this, are swayed, and when we've done this in organizations, it varies, but there's also controls that go into psychometric testings as well. And I mean, any of you that are used to going to the Gemba, you're used to getting people trying to tell you, you've come on the worst day, it's not always like this, so people are trying to manage what we think of them all of the time. And that appears through psychometric testing as well. Okay. Now, I won't tell you why or how it's managed, but within these types of benchmarks, there's a couple of key questions called impression management questions. And what we do is we look for patterns in the impression management questions to see, is this person trying to skew the information to give me a false or an accurate picture of myself? And we can usually lift out, when we spot the telltale signs and the statistically telltale signs of impression management and psychometrics, you can start to make a decision whether to exclude that data point or how valuable that particular data point is from the data. So there's ways of means and controlling that, because sometimes you would be invited into an organization where there are problems, maybe a toxic work environment, and all of a sudden everybody's completely engaged. They hate the leadership, but they're completely engaged. I'm perfect, I'm great, I'm fully love my job. But then you look at the impression management questions and it shows a very, very different story. So as with any kind of psychometric testing or any kind of measurement of people, these really are meant to start questions. Okay, it's not like it's A or it's B, or we got 5,000 widgets we got 5,000 units as a yield from this particular product. It's meant to give us a starting point for questions, for dialogue, for actions, and where we're going to go within the organization. And that's that reflection piece. Now that we've learned this, what can we learn? What can we do with it? And with the benchmark, with benchmarking activities as well, you can see patterns within the organization, patterns within the team. We can see particular if it's designed in the way and it's required in this way, you can then measure individual leaders and how their teams are performing. You can then build in length of service, so some actual data metrics in as well. So are people who are here longer more or less engaged than people who are here shorter? Are people who are in specific roles or specific levels, more engaged or less engaged? Or so there's a whole lot of information you can start to build into this company survey that actually allows you to analyze this psychometric information much more meaningfully, and start to kind of highlight issues and opportunities to improve. Because look, that's what we're here about. We're here to talk about, how to measure it, how to collect that data, then how to interpret that data, reflect on it. And like with anything in lean or any kind of lean project, well, we bloody well want to improve it. Okay, so we want to make it better. And I think every time I talk to somebody about lean culture, and Julie the same, and I've probably talked to a few of you here already about lean culture over the years, we like to talk about it, but we don't really never want to do anything about it, or we haven't got the time to do anything about it, or we don't know where to start. And it's not a yellow belt project. It's a bigger piece than that. But as we all know, and I imagine that's why a lot of you are here today, tools and techniques will only take us so far. okay? And getting the culture right, getting that 9/10 underneath the tip of the iceberg right is really what's going to take our lean implementation to the next level, and that's culturally driven, okay? So a good culture, it can happen naturally, okay? So as Sensei Granny says, a good culture can happen organically, okay? But really a great culture, it's intentional and it's by design, okay? So we can have a great place to work, everybody can get on well, but really if we want to have a great culture and make sure that absolutely everybody is involved and we're getting the best for everybody, but also everybody that's with us, all of our teams, that they're getting the best from their investment of their time, we need to make sure that it's intentional and by design. And if we loop back to our Ikigai, okay, in our Ikigai model, and we look at how that maps onto an organization or into a business, it goes down to being about what the business cares about, what the world needs, okay, so what our customers need, what the business and the teams and the people within there are good at, and then what our customers are willing to pay for, okay, so where's the value within the organization, and get those four things right, and we've got the mission of the organization, the vision of the organization, our offering, okay, our products and services, and the jobs that the world or our customers actually need doing, okay? So getting that engagement right, getting that mission, that vision right, and making sure that our organizations really enough are sustainable, that our businesses are gonna last and they're gonna keep the jobs that we have. I mean, because that's what we're focused on, making strong, sustainable organizations that can grow, but also grow good jobs, and those jobs last for a long period of time as well. So in terms of improvement, we've got to have improvement activities, and some of the improvement activities we can have in terms of developing leadership behavior through coaching, developing leaders as coaches, okay, shaping psychologically safe teams, you know, having a clear mission, vision, values, having employee engagement activities, and aligning the mission and vision and the values of the organization with those of the individuals that work there and that of the community outside of it. Julie, have you some more detail on some of these, do you?
Yeah, I think that, you know, when it comes to these, it's really beginning with the end in mind and really clarifying, you know, what does great look like? Because again, sometimes we just assume like, oh, we know what a good leader is, we know what a good culture is, but everyone on your team might have a different perception of what great looks like. So getting people together, really clarifying what do we want. And I would say as well, then tying these things in to performance, you know, in terms of how you evaluate performance. Like, you know, it says there, align mission, vision, values with individuals, you know, making that part of a person's performance. For example, if your cultures or if your values are respect, innovation, and agility, your people should be evaluated on how respectful, innovative, and agile that they are. You know, it should be discussed in performance reviews, because if it's just words on a wall, it's a nice to have, but it gets forgotten. Whereas if it's actually measured and tied in with performance, then those values will get lived. I would say as well, you know, when we're talking about psychologically safe teams, one strategy that you could take is building time into the agenda, into a meeting agenda, for challenging the status quo. So, okay, we have this proposed idea or this solution, but now what could go wrong? You know, playing devil's advocate, and that'll help you so that it's not that one person is being disruptive when everyone else wants to move on and find a solution. It's acknowledging the importance of trying to see things with new eyes and trying to, you know, cultivate that psychological safety. So those would be some of the things that stick out to me when I look at those aspects. And I know we've just put up a poll that you'll see there, asking all of you, you know, what are you currently doing to develop your lean culture? And what pillars do you think need the most work in your organization? So that poll should be up in front of you. The first one there is open-ended, so you can pop it in some of the strategies, and that'll be really helpful for us, for everyone to see. You know, if you want to share yours, you might get to, you know, other people might learn from it a little bit.
I think that point about building time into the meeting to seek out dissenting views. Let's talk about an idea, and then let's talk about what's wrong about that idea. So looking for the ugly baby. The ugly baby moments, inviting people to tell you how bad your idea is or what could go wrong. And again, tools we're familiar with. If we were to sit down, if we're planning a project or a process, and we might look at an FMEA, so a failure modes and effects analysis, can we do the same with ideas and with concepts, and be actively, let's consider everything that's wrong with this idea, and then being as that linking it back to us as competent lean leaders, that we're balanced enough in our processing, we're authentic enough to take on board all of that information, and then to process it fairly and not weigh one piece of information. And this psychological safety really helps with this, is that we don't weigh someone's information, give it a higher value because of their position. We evaluate each piece of information based on the piece of information that's actually there. So, and being open to take that in and change your idea completely based on the feedback and based on the suggestions, and run with that as well. So it's really important to solicit that out as well. I'm going to leave that poll open because there is an open question there as well. So to look for that. I mean, the other aspect, Julie mentioned it as well with when we talked about the reflection piece, is that when somebody, if somebody undertakes this type of culture assessment, and a leader, and we identify leaders that are going to be assessed for their leadership style, like the first thing to do is to reflect on that assessment with them. Okay, and that's a coaching approach, and that's a very strong coaching conversation. And Julie might just outline how that conversation goes when somebody receives an assessment, because it's a skill I think we could all bring into our management and our leadership practice as well.
Yeah, I quite like psychometric assessments. I think some people like them, some people don't, but I do think, like we've been saying, what gets measured gets managed. And I think that psychometric assessments, they're only as good as the conversations that they generate. And there's no point in just filling in a survey and then it being forgotten about. So I think the coaching conversation is amazing, because it allows a person to take a step out of their day-to-day, and it just creates this space in which you can really take a deep dive, whether it's into self-awareness or team awareness. Your coach is kind of supporting and challenging you, which again, I don't think we normally get in a normal conversation. If with our parents or partners or friends, if you say, oh, I have this problem, they'll say, oh, well, would you not do this, or why don't you do that? Whereas a coach is helping you to kind of reach that potential, or unlock the solutions that you have within you. So I think those coaching conversations are fantastic. Again, whether they're happening on a one-to-one basis or with a team. And it's great to have a framework when you're having a coaching conversation. Like, say, for example, we use the team culture canvas. We mentioned how great cultures are designed intentionally and then they're consciously lived every day. So the first step is really to clarify how you want your culture to be. So we can see there with this, and we can make this available to everyone as well. It's really useful for setting agreed norms and standards so that every team member is clear on what's expected of them. And when it comes to designing this, it's not just a case of, oh, the leader goes away and comes up with this. It's a team coming together. And if you're doing it in person, you could print off this canvas and use sticky notes. Or if you're working remotely, you could use collaborative tools like Mural. But I do recommend getting the team together. You could do think, pair, share, where you have an individual thinking initially of how would they fill in all these different areas, like their goals, their values, their strengths and weaknesses. So getting them to think individually, then pairing off and having a conversation with another person, and then sharing it with the group, discussing it as a whole, noting some common themes, and then consolidating those. So that's something that we find to be really useful. And again, we can make that available to all of you as well. Another one that we have is called the Ways of Working, or a WOW document. And this can be used again, whether you're all in person, all remote, or hybrid, bit of a mixture. This is really useful. Like, say, for example, if you've ever been, you're getting emails late at night and you're wondering, does this person expect me to reply to them, or are they okay? Should I check in with them? Well, this could be a way of communicating. Oh, I actually like to do a bit of extra work in the evenings once my kids are gone to bed. So let people know that, and then you can detail that that's how you prefer to, or how or when you prefer to communicate. You can detail how you like to manage others, or how you like to be managed. You can share your values, your goals, your interests, your personality. Say, for example, oh, I'm more of an introvert, so I do appreciate my alone time to focus, but that doesn't mean that I won't socialize on breaks or outside of work. So it's just sharing all these this information about yourself so that people can know how you like to work, and it helps us to just capture those differences. I will say, though, one caveat here is, in terms of developing psychological safety, it's not a case simply of demanding more information from people. So if you're working in an environment where you think there might not be as much psychological safety, it might you might want to develop that and do a bit more groundwork before you introduce this WOW doc. So if you are unsure, do just have a chat to us, and we'd be happy to chat about building that kind of culture.
I've just shared the poll there on the current needs. I think it's called the current needs, and badly named poll. Again, kind of an even split between 45% of people saying leadership behavior needs the most work, 27% saying team behavior, 36% saying individual behavior, and 45% of people think organizational behavior needs a lot of work as well. So people could select multiple options there as well. So it's a broad spectrum across it as well. Typically, when we start talking to organizations, they tell us there's a problem with an individual or a team that's not performing, and we tend to push it back up to leadership. Leadership starts with you. Okay, so you as leaders within your organization, whether you're leading a cell or one person or a team of people or the whole organization, you're the leader. Even if we're not in a leadership role, we should be acting as leaders as much as possible. And a better us, so a better organization, a better us starts with a better you. Okay, so a better us as better leaders. Some really interesting, I won't share this directly because there's a company name mentioned, so I won't share the other part of the poll as well. I'm just going to stop sharing that as well. But some interesting points here: encouraging individuals to green and yellow belts to develop a think tank meeting room where all business titles are left at the door. And they encourage open, safe communication. So that's a really key consideration for a psychologically safe environment, is to leave titles at the door. Okay, so your status doesn't matter here. What matters is the content of the idea that you're bringing and the value of the idea that you mention as well. Translating those cultural values into daily habits. Come on, we should be living and breathing and dying standard work here within our businesses. It's about applying standard work practices to our cultural values as well, making sure it appears on a checklist. Other people here doing a 30-minute weekly meeting to go through the week. What difficulties did we have? Did any tasks take too long? How can we improve them? What is the plan for next week, and how do we feel about it as well? Having more structured meetings and using tools to help us collaborate and work better together. Helping to organize yellow belt training for staff. Okay, so get more people involved, make them feel like they have value. Great point there as well. Learn what is wrong and how to improve it by seeking out opportunities to improve. Consistently reviewing what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and not being afraid to make changes. Okay, and not being afraid to have failure and to learn from it as well. Getting a 5S program started. Yes, so really the fundamentals. Once we start 5S and when people get on board, that is the first dynamic shift in culture in an organization. Getting people to see waste and to start to understand 5S and values as well, and developing our leaders to lead by example and develop their own standard work or their leader standard work as well. Okay, brilliant. Thanks a million, Julie. We started at the start. We started talking about another island in 1,500 kilometers from Tokyo called Okinawa. And here on this island, okay, we may not live to be 100 years old. I don't think I will anyway at this rate. But through the implementation of lean cultures, digital transformation, sustainability, and with the supports that are out there for us, through whether it be through community supports like this, through the Midlands Lean Network, through Lean Business Ireland, or the local enterprise office, or Enterprise Ireland, or the IDA, we can start to build lean organizations, and we can look to build businesses that will live to be 100 years old, okay? And they'll be successful, and they'll be sustainable, and they'll serve their staff, they'll serve their customers, but most importantly, they'll serve the community and the countries in which they're based as well. Okay, so that is us. It's just coming to 12 o'clock. If there's any questions, I didn't see any questions coming into the chat, just the feedback in the polls. Okay, brilliant. So that just leaves me then just to wrap up and say thank you. If you have any questions for myself or Julie in relation to the lean culture benchmark, you can just get in touch. So hello@Jigsaw BB. We will, yes, Sean, we will share the slide deck in PDF and the 2 canvases that were there as well. We will share them in PDF or PowerPoint, and we can put them in some way that's edible that you can post on them as well. If anyone's interested, we can set up a demo version of the benchmark so you can get an assessment of the reporting as well.